components inside of pages, inside of components, and inside of app folder. But it is not covering components inside of features folder. So why is it that Tailwind seems to be working here? Honestly, I can't exactly tell you why, but what I can tell you is that it will stop working at some point. Obviously, this has something to do with Tailwind's, just-in-time compiler or something like that, or maybe even hot reloading, but this technically should not work. So we have to ensure that we do one important step here, and that is to copy and paste the line here and add features inside of here. So now we are 100% sure that all Tailwind we write will be supported inside of this features folder right now. So we don't really have anything important at the moment here, but we will have later on. So again, double check inside of your tailwind.config.ts right here that you have added source features and then the exact same thing as all of those have above inside of your content. If you want to, you can do this in an even easier way and simply allow everything inside of source, right? That's one way of doing it. But just make sure that you have the exact same Tailwind config as I do. Great, and now this should work without any problem. I'm even gonna go ahead and just remove my next cache here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do run dev again. I'm gonna refresh this and this should still work just fine. I'm gonna add 1, 2, 3 here. There we go, hot reloading is working. I can change this to green. I think we are now safe to say that our features folder is definitely covered by Tailwind config. What we're going to do next is add all the necessary components from Часть for this project. So let's head back inside of our terminal here, and we've learned how to add individual components, but here's what we can do as well. Using the command bunx --bun Часть at 2.1.0, add, instead of writing out the button, you can simply press the enter after you write add. Again, if you're using npx, you just need npx Часть 2.1.0. So if you add, it's gonna ask you which ones to, well, add. And you can use the arrow keys to go up and down and space to select or unselect specific components. So let's go ahead and add everything we need. We're gonna have to use avatar, so make sure you select avatar. Badge, we already have buttons, so no need for that. Select the calendar, card, the chart, the checkbox. Go ahead and select the dialog, the drawer, the drop-down menu, the form, the input, the label, the popover, scroll area, select, separator, sheet, skeleton, sonar, table, tabs, and text area, and press enter. And now you're gonna get asked whether you want to override the button. That's because some of the components we selected have their own buttons, so they are asking whether you want to override it. So just select yes here. And there we go. So you should have a couple of new files inside of your project here. So let me just go ahead and show you inside of source, inside of components. There we go. You should have all of these new projects here. I mean components, not projects. Great. So what I want to do next is I want to show you how we're going to customize this and turn it into our own component library. So let's go inside of the app folder, inside of page.tsx. We can remove this import and instead we can add a button component here. And let's write primary here, like this. And what I want to do next is I want to go ahead and let's see, can I kind of have a gap here? Flex gap 4. And I want to add some more here. So for example, I want to add secondary here, and I want to give it a variant of secondary, like this. Then I want to have, let's see what's next here. Basically, I want them all here. So destructive. After destructive, I want to add ghost. After that, I want to add link. After link, I'm going to add outline, and I believe that's it. There we go. So all of my buttons are here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to modify them and just make them a bit more original. And perhaps it's better if I just let them all be next to each other like this. There we go. Let's go ahead and let's go inside of the button component. And specifically, let's go inside of the button variants. And what I want to do is I want to change how the primary or the default button looks like. So let's go ahead and remove everything inside of this default variant here. I'm just going to select everything inside and just clear it out. So right now, as you can see, it's just empty. So let's go ahead and let's write background gradient to bottom from blue 600 to blue 700. And then let's go ahead and give it text primary foreground, like this. And then let's add the hover effects. So hover from blue 700 and then another hover to blue 700. So now when you hover, you can see how it loses that gradient effect, right? So that's going to be our default button here. Now let's go ahead and let's modify the destructive in a similar manner. So we're going to add background gradient to bottom as well, from amber 600 to amber 700, like that. Text can be destructive foreground, so basically white, and then we're going to add some hover effects. So hover from amber 700 and hover to amber 700. So when you hover, there we go, it gets flattened out. That's the effect we're looking for. There we go. So we already have some pretty unique buttons here. Great. And now what I want to do is I want to modify my secondary button here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove everything inside of here. And I'm going to add background white, text black, hover, background neutral 100. There we go. So my secondary looks like that now. Great. I'm going to go ahead and modify the ghost as well here. So my ghost will be border transparent, shadow none, hover background accent, hover text accent foreground. There we go. So my ghost looks pretty similar to my secondary, but we're going to use them on different occasions. Let's remove the link. We're not going to need link at all. And instead, let's add a new one called muted, which will be background neutral 200, text neutral 600, hover background neutral 200/80. So I'm going to go inside of my page here. And since I removed link, I'm going to change this to be muted and write muted here. There we go. So that's my muted button now. Great. Now I'm going to add another button here. Another variant, which we're going to call territory. So this will have a background blue 100, text blue 600, border transparent, hover background blue 200, and shadow none. I'm now going to go back inside of page. I will copy and paste the last one, and I'm going to give it the value of territory. And let's see if I made a misspell here. Territory. Make sure you don't misspell territory. There we go. Now we have 3 kind of important buttons which we are going to use. Great. Before we move forward, what I want to do is I want to rename this variant from default to be called primary. So I'm going to go ahead and select this and change this to primary. And then one important thing I have to do is go inside of my default variants and remove this to primary. And then I have to go inside of page here. If I want to now, for example, I can no longer use default, right? I now have the availability to use primary, and nothing should change because that is the default button. So if you don't append the variant, it's gonna fall back to primary. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's change the sizes a bit. So by default, I want all of my buttons to be a bit larger. So I'm gonna give them a height of 10. My small variant will not have a text extra small inside of it. Instead, I'm gonna add an extra small variant here with a height of 7, rounded MD, px of 2, and text extra small. My large variant will be a bit larger than this, having a height of 12. And my icons will be a bit smaller, having a height and width of 8. Like that. So if you want to, you can try it out. If I go ahead and give this a variant, a size of large, there we go, it's pretty large. And if I give it an XS size, it's pretty small. I'm gonna go back inside of my button now, and now what I wanna do is modify some things in this default class name right here. So an important and the most visible thing here is that I'm gonna be using a font semi-bold instead of font medium for my buttons, right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify how my disabled states look like. So I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here, to the end here, and remove this default disabled field. And I'm going to create my own. So on disabled, I'm going to add background neutral 100. Then I'm going to do another disabled to be from neutral 100. Another one to neutral 100. So what this is doing is it's basically flattening out any possible gradients which we might have. So we are covering both cases, whether our variant are using backgrounds or if they're using gradients by using this type of, aliases, right? Let me just find where I was, okay. So after this now, I'm gonna add a couple of more things, including a text color when we are disabled. So again, when disabled, let's use text neutral 300. Let's also add a border around each of our buttons, border neutral 200, and let's add a shadow small. There we go. So those are going to be our buttons, as you can see, quite unique, may I say so myself. Great. We now have these buttons, and what I want to do next is just modify a few other components we're going to have. So let's go inside of components UI, and you should have the input component. So inside of here, looks like I have some error here. I'm not exactly sure why, but we're gonna come back to this later. And let's go ahead and change the input height to be 12 instead of 9. So I want my inputs to be a bit larger. So if you want to, you can go to your source page here and add an input here if you want to. So you can observe that as well, even though it's not exactly, too visible at the moment. And let's do the same thing inside of our select component right here. So choose the select component here, find the select trigger, and simply increase from height 9 to height 12 like this. Great. So we have now customized our components to our liking, and we're now going to use them to build our authentication screens. Great, great job. So before we continue forward and build our authentication screens, I noticed we have some errors in our newly added components from Часть UI. So if I go inside of source components and, for example, input component, I have an error here. And by looking at my older project, it seems like this only happens in the newest version of Next.js, which at the time of making this video happens to be, where is it? Let me just find it, 14.2.14. And we know the Часть version here. Let's go ahead and try and find which one it is. The latest Часть version is 2.1.0. So it looks like that combination causes these errors here. So this is what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and shut down my app and go ahead and run run build or npm run build. And inside of here, you should see all the errors which you have inside of your project. And most of these are just simple lint errors. Let's go ahead and fix all of them one by one so we can continue with our project knowing that we no longer have any errors inside of our components. And in an odd chance you don't have any errors, well then that's perfectly fine. No need to do anything then. Let's go ahead inside of calendar.tsx. So it looks like we have two errors here. We are spreading the props, but we are not using them anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove both of this here. There we go. So inside of my components UI calendar, that seems to be resolved now. No more errors in this file. So that's for the calendar. We then have the chart component. So let's go inside of chart.tsx. Looks like we have these three imported but never used. So I'm going to remove them here. Let's scroll a bit down. And inside of here, it seems like this is defined but never used. So let's see, can I maybe just add a text? I can't. So usually the underscore should be fine for no unused vars, but for some reason it's not here. So you have to be careful with this. We cannot just remove this because it obviously needs to be the second argument here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and disable this line right here. So you can hover over this, quick fix, and click disable no unused vars for this line. You can also pause the screen and spell this out exactly. So that resolves the chart issues. We then have the input and text area in errors. So let's go ahead inside of UI, inside of input. And this can be fixed quite easily as well. So basically what this is erroring is that we are extending an empty interface. So the way it suggests fixing this is replacing empty interface with a type alias like this. So export type input props. You can see the difference, right? We just change this to be a type, and instead of extends, we simply assign that to be the new element. So change it like this. And we have to do the same thing inside of the text area right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same thing here. Quick fix, replace empty interface with a type alias. Like this. In case you don't have those options, you can pause the screen and write it out exactly as I did. I think text area was the last error. So if I do run build or npx run or npm run build, I think that now there we go. So make sure that when you run run build, you can build your project without any errors. This is important. I don't want us to continue if we have any errors at all. Looks like we are unlucky with our versions of Часть and Next.js, but not a big problem. We just resolved all of them quite easily, may I say so. Great. So what I want you to do now is do rmrf.next. So I want you to remove all cache and then just do run dev or npm run dev. And let me go ahead and refresh my browser here. I just want to double check that everything is working fine. I'm going to change this to primary 1, 2, 3. There we go. And no errors here. Perfect. Great job.